good evening. Oh, I'm going to need some traveling music. I feel like these transitions are from over there to over here. We'll have to figure that out. But I'm Deanna Heiss, and I'm a member here at St. Luke's and a volunteer on the Oasis team. And I feel like I really have the best job on the team because I get to talk to people like you here and the people who are watching this from home and staff members about their faith story. I get to hear and ask questions about when and why people started asking those big questions and highs and lows, and when people felt like their life and their faith were running sort of parallel, and when they felt like it intersected, and how all of that brought people to where they are today. Today we get to talk to a staff member. She's newly on the staff as of August, Pastor Carrie. So welcome to Pastor Carrie. And what we've done in the past is asked a couple sort of background questions, and then I have some questions that were submitted by members like y'all on Facebook. And then I have, if we have time, we have sort of a rapid fire, like don't think too hard about the question, just give sort of the first answer that pops into your mind. So if we have time, we'll do that, and that's always a really fun way to get to know somebody. So, Pastor Carrie, welcome.
Thank you.
Give us some broad brush strokes of who you are. Tell us your pronouns. Tell us where you're living right now and who is living in your house with you. That can include people, pets, plants. Who's with you in your house?
Sounds great. Yes. My name is Carrie. Last name is Greenquist Petersen. 2 names put together. I was really young when I got married and thought that sounded like a really good idea. In retrospect, it doesn't fit on any form. So, at all, ever. So you can just call me Pastor Carrie. That's good enough. My pronouns are she and hers. I live with my husband, Matt, and our 2 dogs, 2 French bulldogs, 2 girls, Franny and Eleanor. They're the exact same age, but they're not sisters, but they are literally twins of each other. So they keep us happy and busy and yes, all those things. I do have a daughter. We have a daughter. She is 19, and she right now is in college, her sophomore year at Luther in Decorah. We bought a house a little bit ago, but we just moved into it sort of 3 days ago. And the rest of the sort of is hopefully coming this weekend in the form of a big tractor trailer with all of our stuff. So that will be a fun thing. It'll be like Christmas because it's been a long time since I've seen it. So I don't remember all the things. It'll be like opening presents.
And when you walked through the doors of St. Luke's for your first interview, that was not your first time here at St. Luke's. You've got a little bit of a history here. So tell us about that.
Yes, that's very true. When I think of church, especially from my childhood, I actually think of these stained glass windows. They were also in the building before this building, which was the church that I went to with my grandmother and my mom and my great-grandmother. So sitting in those pews and maybe Easter or Christmas, and whenever there were intercessory prayers, staring at those, hoping the prayers would be over sometime soon. They're so long. So yes, those are my first. This is one of my first memories of church. Is not this particular building of St. Luke's, but St. Luke's.
Tell us a little bit about your calling to ministry. I feel like I've known many pastors in my life, and I love this question because I think the stories are so interesting, and they range from, I always knew, there was never a question, I always knew. Pastor Tim talks about giving communion to his stuffed animals, and you range on the other end then of people who say, God brought me kicking and screaming into the ministry. I kept saying no, and he kept saying yes. So tell us your story. What does that look like for you?
Sure, I know. It's a great question because the answers are as different as the people, and each one of us is so different and so unique that, of course, the Holy Spirit would speak to each one of us really differently. So you're right. It's a really fun question to ask people. My road was definitely not one of I knew it right away. I was talking to the confirmation students earlier this evening. I always just really liked asking questions, and it turns out that that's what theologians do, right? They ask questions about the realities of life. What are we doing here? Why are we here? Why do bad things happen? Why do good things happen? Who is God in all of this? What do scriptures have to say about that? And I just loved asking those questions and then seeking answers. So my entire life really was just seeking answers down all kinds of different paths that I happened to find myself on. And when I sort of found the Lutheran Church again, about 10 years ago or so, 8 to 10 years ago or so, it just felt like a homecoming. And that's how I describe everything that happened after that, is I just felt closer and closer to what home feels like, just following that gut feeling. Never really any kind of logic to it, not a lot of thinking involved in it, a lot of just sort of following what felt like the right thing to do at the right time. And that actually is exactly where St. Luke's came back into it for me. Was I had absolutely no idea as I was graduating from seminary. This just never really occurred to me. We were living in Texas. I didn't know where we wanted to live next. And one thing just led to another, which led to another, that I just sort of followed as it kept feeling right, as it kept feeling like home.
Tell us a little bit. Everybody loves to hear the things that people admire in them. So tell us about St. Luke's. What have you so far? I know you've only been here for a couple weeks, so we don't expect you to know everything yet, or everyone. But what are some things that inspire you about being here? What are some things that you're excited about?
Sure. I think that there's just such an energy for learning and growth and what can we do next, and not so much a concentration on let's try to get back to the way things used to be, more of a concentration on where are we going in the future? Where are we going in the future? How are we going to get there together? What is that going to look like? Again, I said that I like asking questions, right? And St. Luke seems to be a place where people also like asking questions. What does this all look like? Where are we all going? And if we don't know the answers before we ask the questions, we can really be open to the Spirit's calling. And that's what I feel like St. Luke's is about. The people that I've met so far seem so excited to just step into what's the Holy Spirit doing? How can we participate in that? What does that look like? Let's talk about it together.
As an aside, that's one of the things that I love too, and opportunities like women's Bible study that I'm part of, Sunday school, confirmation, whatever it is. I love that we're a community of people that admits that we don't know things. And that's a powerful thing to say, and so we kind of learn together. So I felt that same way too. We're going to move into some of the questions that some members submitted on Facebook. One of them actually ties perfectly into a conversation that you and I were having earlier, Pastor Carrie, as it relates to other faiths and your interest and experience geographically and culturally experiencing people of other faiths and those tenets and what are important and how we're similar and how we're different. The question from Facebook actually asks about a very specific difference in two religions, but I would just invite you to talk about your experiences and why that interfaith dialogue is so important to you.
Sure, yeah, thank you. I think that sometimes when we hear the same words over and over again, it tends to start to like go maybe just through and out the other side. And so when maybe I was raised in the Lutheran Church, and so when you say the creed from the time, you start to like, the creed, it's easy to kind of take those truths that we find in this thing we call Christian faith and just kind of take them for granted. Oh, yeah, I've heard all that before. But then when you go out and you listen to truths that are parts of other faiths' creeds, it's almost like you're like, oh, yeah, and wait, I've heard something like that before. Oh, yeah, it was in the Apostles' Creed. So there's for me, the language of other faiths can speak Christianity to me in ways that is clearer for me to hear and easier for me to understand than sometimes the traditional language of Christianity can, if that makes any sense to you. And that's just a weird thing about me. So as I went and traveled and looked for what are the truths, like I mentioned before, what are the answers to some of those questions? How do we ask them? How do we engage them? I loved hearing what other faith traditions had to say about them. It helped me to have a perspective on the world in the sense of people completely unlike me, raised in completely different places, and then also what we all seem to have in common. You know, what are some of those common human experiences that we all seem to sort of somehow have, even though our backgrounds are so different. So yeah, I've loved learning about all of those different faiths, and I'll borrow the words of Barbara Brown Taylor in her book Holy Envy, when she says that studying other religions makes me a better Christian. And I think that that's true for me, for sure.
Well, we started with sort of deep and philosophical and complex, and we're going to move to the complete opposite of that, because the next question on Facebook, we know with beauty products and science, we don't have to keep the same eye color or hair color. We can change it up, and that is our right to do so. So the next question on Facebook, which I love that somebody was brave enough to ask, how do you keep your hair looking so amazing?
Yes, shockingly enough, I do have this conversation with people in grocery stores, in lines at the post office, all that kind of stuff. Oftentimes with younger people who would really like to get the same thing. There's just a couple of tricks to it. You must bleach first. That is the most important thing. And secondly, use good products. Thirdly, don't shampoo too much. And fourth, stay out of the sun as much as possible.
That number 4 is a good one for many, many reasons, I think.
That's right.
All right. So a couple that we asked nearly all the staff members last year. This comes from Jay Keel. Does pineapple belong on pizza?
All are welcome.
Oh.
And yes.
You know, that was so well played that we're just going to move on before somebody gets offended. All right. Is decaf coffee really coffee?
So you all might know that I used to own a coffee shop, so I am sort of uniquely qualified to speak directly to this question.
Yes.
Yes, it is real coffee. It has gone through either a water process or a chemical process to remove a chemical component, but it is definitely still coffee.
Okay, technically. All right. What do you do when you're feeling down to lift yourself up?
Yeah, it's funny because as I was sitting and listening to our gospel for tonight, I thought to myself, oh yeah, there's a reason I picked that for both my wedding and my ordination. That was also the text for my wedding. And in some ways, it's just breathe and get that perspective back, right? I like to get out, maybe outdoors, take a walk, do something physical, ground myself again. Sometimes I tend to get all up in my head. I don't know if you ever do that. Get all up in your head? And forget that you're a human being. That's basically the basics of it. We are in this body, in this time, in this world, in this moment. Breathe into it, ground into it, and in some ways I feel like Jesus is speaking to that in that 6th chapter of Matthew. What does it gain us to worry even 1 minute? Nothing, right? What about the lilies of the field? Can't we think of ourselves that way too? Sometimes something about being human seems to make it difficult for us to live that way, but to ground yourself in that every once in a while, for me, is key.
What are some hobbies that you enjoy?
Sure. I love listening to music. I also play music. I play guitar and drums, and I haven't had my drums for a while because they're on the truck. So I'm looking forward to getting those back. And we love to walk the dogs, play with the dogs. I do some video games, but not tons. I have a couple of favorites. And I love to read, and I love to write.
Our beloved Julie Hogue said that she would not be doing her job if she did not ask if you're a blood donor. Julie organizes all the blood drives here. So if you're not one now, please say yes, I will be in the future.
Yeah, so you all are the first to know. No, I don't think anyone here knows this about me except my mom. I am an O negative blood type. So I had a really bad blood donating experience when I was younger, like collapsed vein, all that kind of stuff. So it's a little bit of a fearful thing for me, but I have been a donor since then. So, and I do understand, having worked in a hospital as a chaplain for a while, how important O negative blood is. So.
Very good. All right. I love this question. When you were a child, who is one person you looked up to and why? And as an adult, who is one person you look up to and why?
Yeah, I thought about this one for a while. You know, there's so many choices to pick from. But one thing that kind of popped in my head as a child is I really looked up to Fräulein Maria from The Sound of Music. You know, I think because she was able to be so vulnerable and kind of admit that she was scared and she wasn't good at things and she could make mistakes, and yet there was this amazing power and presence in that, and I just always thought that that was such a wonderful thing, and she just had this beautiful presence, even though she was not an expert, you know, right? She was comfortable with that. So yeah, I would say as a child that was one of the people I looked up to. And it kind of goes along the same lines that as an adult, I don't know if any of you are familiar with Brené Brown, but she's a shame researcher and also an excellent writer and podcast host. And she talks about that. She talks about the power of vulnerability. And she's really been a guide for me as I've, especially in my professional career, with how do we be vulnerable and still be leaders? And I actually feel like that's the way of the future, is to not hide from our vulnerability, but to claim it. There's a certain amount of power in that, and she does it beautifully in a very humble and vulnerable way. So she is a hero of mine.
Mine too. What or who was your favorite class/teacher in high school, and do you still use what you learned in that class?
Yeah. Another great question. That made me think a little bit too. But I definitely think it was my freshman English class, and the teacher was Mr. Mancini, and he actually just passed away, so we're thinking about him a lot recently. But he was the first person who sort of told me that maybe I could write, that maybe that was something that I had sort of a talent for, and I had never thought of it before. And I use this English skills every day from that class. Writing skills that you learn right away, employ them the rest of your life, and cut down on those adverbs.
He had confidence in you. Yeah,
Yes.
I like that. Okay, so now we're to kind of the rapid fire. Just like quick questions, don't think too hard. Whatever answer you give is the right one. Here we go. You ready?
Ready.
Okay. Best sandwich.
A very expertly crafted and balanced hamburger with cheese cannot be beat,
Okay.
I think.
Okay. What's one thing you own that you should really throw out?
Yes. So I sleep with a blanket, like a security blanket. And I had one for a really long time, and I had to replace it because it was getting embarrassing, even for me. And it's not like I show it. I was embarrassed that I owned it. So I got a new one, but I could not throw the old one out. It had been with me for so long. So I put it in my linen closet, and I did pack it, so I know it's on that truck. And I really have no business owning it. But.
So your drums and your blankie are
That's right.
the first things you'll unpack.
That's right.
All right. In your opinion, what is the scariest animal?
And you know what? It's a moray eel. And I don't know why, but it just looks really scary. I mean, I don't think I'm ever going to be attacked by one. I hope not, but they are kind of dangerous, but there's something just terrifying about the look of a moray eel to me.
Okay. Apples or oranges?
Apples for sure.
Have you ever asked someone for their autograph? And don't give me yes or no. If it's yes, you have to tell us who.
I've asked for lots of people's autographs, actually. But my favorite one of my favorite ones is probably Chris Farley. I have a whole story about meeting him on State Street one day. And so maybe someday I'll tell that story.
I would like to hear that. Favorite action movie?
Indiana Jones, if you think if that can be an action movie.
Sure.
And if not, I would probably go with Die Hard.
Oh, nice. Good choices. Favorite smell?
I love, it's called sweet fern, and it's up north in northern Wisconsin. You can just smell it when you get out of the car. It's just this beautiful kind of minty wintergreen smell, and there's just nothing else like it, and I just love that smell.
Least favorite smell?
So if anyone's ever been on Highway 80 going to Denver, you go through a town called Ogallala. Has anyone ever been to Ogallala? They have a big slurry farm there, and it is the worst smell ever. You smell it 20 miles ahead of time and 20 miles after. The worst.
Betsy Bush from Denver. Yeah, you know what she's talking about? Yeah? All right. Exercise, worth it?
It is worth it. It's difficult, but it's worth it.
Flat or sparkling water?
Sparkling, for sure.
All right.
Yeah. Surprising.
I don't know why that's surprising. I don't know. I prefer flat. So anybody who says sparkling, I'm like, yeah, wrong, but okay. Yeah. All right. Most used app on your phone?
And this is so boring. I don't know, my weather app, but I guess I can't really, yeah. And I also read the New York Times on my app in the morning.
Okay. Yeah. You get one song to listen to for the rest of your life. What is it?
So I'm a Lutheran, right? Which means I believe this law and gospel nature of reality, which means I get two songs, a law song and a gospel song. Oh. I just claim that as a Lutheran theologian.
Clever.
So my gospel song is No Rain by Blind Melon. It's also kind of just the song of my life. It's whenever, it's just a song that's on the radio a lot, and I love it. And it's always great for a rainy day. My law song is by a band called Alice in Chains, and it's called Love, Hate, Love, and it is a tragic song about how life is not fair.
Oh, okay. Describe the rest of your life in 5 words.
Beloved of God right now.
And one that I skipped that I know you were prepared to answer is, what do you think happens when we die?
That's a big one, right? And I always say, I don't know, right? None of us know. But there's something about going home, right? If I feel like that calling that I've felt through all my life feels like going home, then something about when we release this physical body, run off this mortal coil, it must feel something like going home.
So I was born in the 70s, but I'm a child of the 80s and 90s, so Oprah is sort of my go-to gal. And she asked a question that I loved that we'll close with here today of many of her guests, and it is, what do you know for sure?
I know it, and I think I've always asked myself that, knowing Oprah, and I was like, what would I do if somebody ever asked me that, and now somebody's
Here's
asking
the day.
me that. Exactly. I know for sure that we are all created uniquely for a reason, and that we are uniquely beloved of our Creator because of who we really, truly are deep down, and never in spite of it.
Wonderful. Well, Pastor Carrie, we are so glad you're here. Thank you for spending this time with us. We welcome you with open arms. If anybody you know would like to learn these same things about Pastor Carrie, I believe Oasis will be posted online tomorrow, so you can watch this all over again. Tell your friends and family, and welcome to Pastor Carrie.
Thank you so much.
you.